Good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins,
I'm Rich Carlson.
and you're watching Train Aficionado live. What a great show we have tonight, Rich. We were just sitting here looking at a couple of the slides, just discussing some of the stuff that we're going to show tonight.
Oh yeah,
As many of you know, this is the 50th year for Amtrak. And there's a lot of stuff that, it's on Amtrak's wish list, some of which has been on their bucket list for a very long time.
yeah.
We also have an interesting merger or two to talk about. We're also going to look at some new paint schemes for some locomotives that for us going out rail fanning, hoping to capture a photo or two of some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. These special paint jobs are kind of the most interesting thing to look at these days. So
Yeah, so
the
a little bit.
homogenization of locomotives and stuff like that, it's the paint schemes that are becoming more and more valuable.
That's for sure. So this is going to be a good show. This is episode number 4 of season 2. If you're watching us for the first time, hit the subscribe button on the channel, and definitely sit back and relax, and we're going to have a good show ahead of us. Let's take a look at our slideshow presentation for this evening. Make sure you stay connected with us. We have the Trackside Bulletin, which you can sign up for on the Train Aficionado website. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. We're there at all those social media platforms as well. You know what I forgot to do, Rich? I forgot to move my mic over.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're a little less loud than you normally are.
There we go. So that should be a little bit
I
better.
turn my volume down.
Yep. So there we go. So stay connected. This probably, Rich, has probably been one of the biggest things that we've been hearing about. I mean, when the talk of the merger took place, well, it hasn't taken place yet. It's going to go through all the rigmarole and so on. But this is going to be big. And this is something that you and I, particularly you, when we talked about the Big Seven, that this will probably be the dream merger.
It is. It's really about the only merger that can take place without triggering more mergers. Somebody taking Kansas City Southern, because otherwise the other 6 railroads are, you got 3 in the east, you got 2 in the east, 2 in the west, and 2 up north. So any mergers involving any 2 of those will necessarily trigger more mergers elsewhere. KCS is kind of a special case because it only goes between here, and then it goes down into Mexico. So it's it's a very desirable position to be in, and it's a very valuable property. And I think CP is just happy they got it first.
Well, that's good. I mean, this seems like it makes the most sense. It's bridging, like you said. It's basically a route from Mexico through the United States up to Canada, bridging it all under one umbrella, pretty much.
Yeah, and you're going to have, if you take a look at CP, it's a T-shaped system, across Canada, and then a couple spines into the U.S., and then Kansas City Southern is a spine from the center part of the U.S. down to Mexico, and then into Mexico itself, and they all kind of come together right there at Kansas City. So it's not like you've got a lot of lines intertwining; it's an end-to-end merger. So it has a good possibility of being approved, and it doesn't trigger a lot of job losses and stuff like that to make the unions go to get upset. So I think this is going to be approved by the U.S. government, who has to approve this. I don't know if the Mexican government has to approve it because of the way Kansas City and Mexico works, but I think that's going to be less of an issue with them. And I think it's going to happen, I think, and it's going to be at least a year or so before it gets approved. So I would still start going and getting your KCS pictures sooner rather than later.
That's for sure. And the great thing, it's like perfect example. If Norfolk Southern and CSX merge, there's going to be redundancy, there's going to be job loss, there's going to be, this was as you said, the perfect marriage. Here's a couple of maps. What I'm going to do for our folks that are watching tonight, I'm going to expand this out so you can really see. This is a couple of plans, with grain trains, intermodal trains, and you can really see what Rich was talking about there with it going across Canada and then that spike going down into Mexico. This is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a very effective railroad. The CP has been looking for a merger partner for quite a while. They tried to get in bed with Norfolk Southern. They tried CSX, and they both kind of told them to, hey, go away. We don't bother us. And so they finally found a willing partner. And really, I think KCS is the only big railroad that could merge with the CP without triggering, a whole ripple effect.
Yeah, this is another map of the auto. It seems like you've got all the automakers that you can see there: Toyota, GM. Your connection right into Detroit. This definitely brings in, and then even down into down south, the same thing. You've got.
Well, you got a lot of auto plants in Mexico and in Texas, so that's KCS territory, and connecting them with the plants up in the Great Lakes area, you got a great supply route there.
Yeah, totally. These are all on the merger website, which you can definitely check out. But yeah, we thought we would share some of this. And Rich, this seems like not as big of a thing, but this is definitely making some headlines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is my backyard. This is the stuff that I used to go rail fanning before I moved out. And basically what it is Watco is one of those companies that owns a bunch of short lines all up in regional lines all throughout the country. One of the lines that they operate is the Wisconsin Southern, which runs mostly former Milwaukee road trackage from the Chicago area up into Madison, Wisconsin, over to Milwaukee and that whole southern Wisconsin area. And Watco is buying a bunch of lines from the Canadian National that were once owned by the Wisconsin Central before Canadian National bought them. One of them is the Algoma Central, which goes from Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, north into Ontario. And if you've ever ridden the train, the Gawa Canyon Tourist Train, which I've done a couple, 3 times, it's that line. And then there's a bunch of lines in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and northern Wisconsin, Green Bay to Milwaukee to Munising, Michigan, and stuff. In that whole area, these are all kind of the branch lines that were mostly former Sioux Line track, and maybe if some of those track might be former Milwaukee Road track or even Northwestern track. And it's not the main lines that the Wisconsin Central had that the CN wanted, which is why they took over this WC in the first place. But it's the other lines in that area. So it'll be interesting to see that come up. And I think the shippers out there are going to like it because they can get more personalized service, which you're not going to get from one of these big, huge railroads.
Yeah, just bouncing back just a tad to the previous slides.
Right.
Dale was wondering, how much has the automakers had an influence for this push of the merger? The great thing about it is they're going to be dealing with essentially one railroad versus 2, because more than likely a lot of this is crisscrossed, along these routes.
Yeah. It's going to be, I'm not sure if they had a lot to do with it individually. I think what they're going to do is they're going to have a lot of say in the operations, and they are going to be a voice to be heard during the approval hearings with the federal government. They are going to have a voice on that, and which means that the CP and the KCS are going to have to make sure that they accommodate these shippers so that they can promise them that they're going to provide better service, they're going to provide more service, or what have you. And with an end-to-end merger like this, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it will be, that's for sure. That's interesting news on the rail front. Here's the layout tonight of our slideshow presentation. We're going to look at the first 50 years of Amtrak, the future of Amtrak, and then we're going to look at passenger train service in the late 80s. So this is all a great show. Pretty much we're going to be talking about passenger service and Amtrak. You're going to see photos of a lot of Amtrak trains. So if you like Amtrak, this is the show for you.
Yeah, you're going to like it.
So let's dive into here. This is taken in Pennsylvania. Great fall shot. The fall colors are popping there, and this is just west of the horseshoe curve. And I think this was the last trip I went out with my dad, and it just the colors were just popping at that time of the year.
And that was all Pennsylvania track.
Yep. So this is what Amtrak's map looks like right now. Of course, it's showing a lot of throughway connection service in the green. The red is the current routes. A lot of these lines are on my bucket list. I definitely want to do the Empire Builder. For myself, I've rode the Northeast Corridor, basically from Boston to Washington. I've rode the Downeaster, going from Boston to Portland and slightly north of there. But there's a lot of track I need to travel, as you can tell.
Yeah, well, and myself, I've ridden the Empire Builder to where was it? To Spokane and back. I've ridden the Cal Zephyr all the way. In fact, I rode it twice. Once to Salt Lake City and back, and then once all the way to California, and then the coast down to Los Angeles. I've ridden part of the Sunset from Phoenix to New Orleans, and that was back when it was still on the Phoenix line, not on the Maricopa line. And then I've ridden most of the Southwest Chief line from Flagstaff to Chicago and back, and of course the City of New Orleans train through Memphis and New Orleans to Chicago to Memphis. So
that must be a cool ride as well.
And of course, the Northeast Corridor and a bunch of those trains.
But yeah, it's you're looking at 21,400 miles of track. And it's basically Amtrak, for the most part, using other people's roads. Norfolk Southern, CSX.
UP, NSF, CSX, CP. The only track that Amtrak owns is the Northeast Corridor and some of the track in Michigan.
Yeah, those are the tracks where they rule the roost.
Yeah.
And it's certainly, it's interesting to hear the dispatching. For the most part, in my area, I have, Amtrak, and it seems like Norfolk Southern's very giving. They're trying to keep Amtrak on time. Mm-hmm. Some other parts of the country, it's not so much.
Out here, it's if they don't let Amtrak trains get in the way of the freight.
So when a normal situation, it's 300 trains daily. A lot of the daily service will be returning sometime in May, which is good news. As Rich and I have spoken about, a lot of the long haul routes are down to about 3 days a week. So be good for some of the service to return back. Some of the brief history. May the 1st of 1971 was a huge day for Amtrak. It's when they rolled out their first trains out of New York to Philadelphia. 1975, they invested, which is a lot of money for then.
That's probably close to $1 billion, if not more, these days.
Yeah, it's got to be. That's a lot. You think in 1975, $343 million into bi-level superliners. That's a lot of money. You look at 70
out of that stuff too.
But look at 1977.
Yeah.
They spent $1.75 billion
Yeah.
to upgrade the Northeast Corridor, and you can definitely tell that they've really did a great job updating that corridor.
Yeah, they're running 100 miles an hour through there all the time. So, but they got their money's worth out of that Superliner order, and they run the wheels off of that stuff.
Yeah. 1997, they got a whole bunch of new locomotives. Actually, 111 of the P42 diesel locomotives, and in 2000,
still using them today.
Yeah, that's for sure.
They just starting to. They just purchased a bunch of Challenger locomotives to start replacing them, but it'll be a couple of years before they start showing up on the rails, and probably another 8 or 9 years before they're all delivered. So,
yeah, I mean that's going to be a huge order there. And then, of course, in 2000, Amtrak's Acela makes its first run from Boston to New York City. Of course, the new version of the Acela is coming soon. They've been testing it along the corridor. They're supposed to bring in the new train set into revenue service sometime this year or early next year. Just depends on how things go.
Yeah.
With but
it's a very goofy looking train, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to show a photo of it in upcoming slides, so we can definitely take a look at it. The great thing about the new Acela trains is they can be expanded or they can take cars on and off. With the current Acela trains, it's a train set.
Yeah.
So if there's an issue with one of the cars or one of the control ends, it's down. You can't swap things out. It's all together as one unit. I think that was probably one of Amtrak's things is when they wanted to replace the Acela, they want to have the option to add or remove coaches. And then
flexible.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. Well, the original Cal Zephyr or the original Zephyr trains were the same thing. It was a fixed consist. You had a power car and X amount of passenger capacity. And if something broke, the whole thing was out.
Yeah, which is not a good way to operate, that's for sure. A lot of you are probably going to be excited about this, that you take photos, you track them through, like the various paint schemes through the Heritage Unit app. These are going to be popping up all over the country, and we have 6 locomotives that are going to be painted in the in different paint schemes. One to celebrate a different period of time for Amtrak. Originally, when the Amtrak started off back in 1971, it was a montage of paint schemes and
they had everybody else's junk.
Yes, exactly. That was a kind way, Rich, of
Yes.
of putting it. But yes. And here's 2 of them here. Of course, your standard, on the left there, we see a lot of this throughout the country. And of course, you see on the right, this is the more traditional where it had the red, white, and blue and silver. Although the one on the left has a little stripe of red down on the bottom. But, it's
typical blue swoosh
with
the logos on there.
So let's take a look at a few more. And then we have, the all blue for the midnight blue. I believe that's, for your overnight services.
Yeah.
And then you have, the more prominent red, black.
Arrow scheme, yeah.
Yes.
And that was the original F40's bloody nose scheme.
Yes, the bloody nose.
Yeah, the pointless zero.
Let's take a look at this. And then we have another, more prominent with the colors on the left, with the red, white, and blue. And then you have the gold, of course, for 50 years. And then 301, if I remember correctly, the one that's on the right, was matching one of their first locomotives that they ran when they painted. If I remember correctly, the history, what it was painted similar to this.
Well, basically what they had is they had Penn Central black, and they added the Amtrak striping to it. So that's why it looked like that. the fact that was so special was they had so many of them. All the GG1s on the corridor were all that Penn Central black, and that's one of the Challengers. So
Yeah.
that's what the Challenger is going to look like.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And this is going to be great for us photographing out and then being able to chase these. So definitely you can check this out on Amtrak's website, which is definitely a great spot to be able to see more photos of these. Yep. The future of Amtrak. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and Rich and I were talking about this. Of course, this is the old, currently soon to be replaced Acela train set that you can see there, and that's in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And the I rail fanned a lot there. They go past you about 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So, like
I stand too close to the tracks.
No, I don't stand too close to the tracks. I'm a bit away from it, but it's still, I mean, because I'm zooming in down the line, with my camera, and I'm anticipating the wind.
Yeah.
The coolest thing I got to say is after it snows, that snow,
contrails.
Yes. It's the coolest thing to be able to see that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen that with 50 mile an hour metro trains. I can't imagine what would be like at 120, 130, 140 mile an hour Amtrak train going through.
It's like a cloud. It's really cool. Yeah, and I really amazed by it. But yeah, I rail fan a lot in Mansfield because they really cranked up speed.
Yeah.
So Amtrak, of course, has a lot of things that it's on its bucket list, and they hope to reach their goals in 2035.
Yeah.
They want to reduce, of course, their carbon footprint, and they want to connect more people in more communities, reduce traffic, address the climate change crisis, provide equal access across regions, creating more jobs, and connecting up to 160 communities, multiple trips up to, in 15 states. They hope to up to 30 potential new routes, and then better service on 20 additional routes. I mean, they're looking to hopefully spend some money. I mean, a lot of other countries, Rich, are, they really embraced rail service.
And I've been to the United Kingdom, and people don't drive from London to Glasgow or London to York or something like that. You take a train.
Yeah.
And everything, and they've got a much more advanced passenger rail network there because they've never really embraced the automobile like we have here in the U.S. So, I mean, we had just as good a train service as anywhere else in the country until, the earlier 1900s when they started building highways. And with the distances in the U.S., I mean, you take a look at where we've got great train service, and that's in that Northeast corridor. Mm-hmm. All right, but you got a huge amount of people concentrated in a relatively small geographic section of the country. But that's only 5% of the land area, but it's got like 25% of the people. And then you go out to this huge section of there's a whole lot of nothing between Chicago and LA, or Chicago and Seattle, and it doesn't justify service. There's to Butte, Montana, it doesn't justify service, but hopefully they'll be able to come up with a practical plan. I don't anticipate every one of these things being completed, but if some of them get completed, great.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the map right now, I'm going to zoom it out so everybody can really see it. And of course, this is on Amtrak's website if you want to definitely take a closer look at it. I know sometimes it's a little hard to be able to see on your devices. I know there's already talk about, and there's been talk about it for years, the very popular Downeaster, which runs from North Station in Boston up to Portland and then a little further north from there been talking about, going out to Rockland, which is a small coastal town in Maine, trying to extend it out a little bit further out to there. They're actually thinking about moving the Portland station. It's a strange setup they have up there, Rich. They basically put the station off the main line. So what ends up happening is the train will go into Portland, then back off that spur, and then continue going north. So they want to put the station actually on the main line.
Yeah,
I think that was probably planned out when the train only went to Portland, and
right.
It made sense then. But now service is continuing to go further north. It doesn't make sense to go up a little track, drop off people, back up, and then go forward again.
Yeah, it'd be making a lot more sense to put the station out on the main line so they don't have to make that backup move.
I mean, the other thing they were talking about when I was in Massachusetts, of course, is going up to New Hampshire, having some service from Boston to Concord. I know the MBTA was interested in doing that. Also, the MBTA and the state of Massachusetts were also looking to connect Boston to Springfield to Albany. The track is there. It just needs to be planned out. And I mean, it's all welded rail and everything, so it's already prepped. The other, just going a little bit further in my neck of the woods now, Charlotte to Atlanta has been talked about quite a bit. And then they've been talking about doing Salisbury to Asheville, which would give a connection to the western part of North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, then you get over into the Midwest, and it looks like they want to expand service from Indianapolis down to Louisville, and then from Chicago to Rockford. And they've been talking about Chicago to Rockford for decades, and they've come very close. I give that one a good shot of happening. There's been a lot of support for that. And then in Michigan or Wisconsin, going up to Green Bay, and then having a line going a route through Eau Claire, and then going up to Duluth. I don't really see those happening, but it's possible. But I don't think that is as practical as the Rockford extension.
We were talking earlier, before we were on the air, you were talking about Phoenix. You kind of hinted towards it. Do you think this is going to be a possibility?
It's always possible. The track is in place, but west of Phoenix, the track has been out of service for 20 years or so. The track is still there. They high rail it once a month or so, but it hasn't had rail service, actual rail service for decades. So it's going to take a whole bunch of money and effort to fix that up. And the Union Pacific, who owns it, is not going to pay for it. So it'll be on a cost-plus basis for the UP, because the UP just doesn't run any freight there. And that's why they moved the Amtrak train off that line in the first place and ran it through the Sunset line a little bit further south, because Amtrak was the only operations on that west of Buckeye, and for 120 miles or so, there was no freight traffic, so UP had no interest in keeping it. If Amtrak's willing to pay the full boat on that, then I could see it happening. But without coming up with that kind of money, I wouldn't see it. What's more practical, and what's more likely to happen is that LA to Las Vegas train.
Yeah, I just totally see that. People, wanting to take a trip into Las Vegas, not have to fly or drive. And that allows everybody to, to be able to take the train and go that route.
Yeah, and there's been sporadic passenger service from LA to Vegas, over the years. There were some excursion trains and some experimental trains and short-lived trains, but I think that one's a lot more practical than some of these other ones.
Yeah, that's for sure. Speaking of a train right there.
Oh, yeah, there's a train going through Coeur d'Alene, Georgia on my on the screen here.
Yeah, but this is very interesting. We're going to be able to sit back and watch this, see what actually, becomes reality, what actually hits the chopping block, and but this will be.
This is a wish list, and if they get some of this, I think they'll be happy. But I don't anticipate everything being.
I agree.
Successful.
And you brought up a valid point. There's a couple of states where it stands right now that don't have rail service currently.
Yeah. Yeah. There's two in the continental U.S. that don't have current service. That's Wyoming and South Dakota. And originally there was Amtrak service through Wyoming. When Amtrak started in 1971, there were three large railroads who declined to join Amtrak. One of them was the Rock Island, and one of them was the Southern, and the third was the Rio Grande. And so Rio Grande ran their own trains from Denver to Salt Lake, and Amtrak trains ran from Omaha to Denver, and then up to Cheyenne, and then across Wyoming to Salt Lake. And eventually the Rio Grande broke down and said, yeah, okay, we're going to join up with Amtrak. And then they rerouted the Zephyr back on its original route through Colorado and Utah.
Wow.
The Southern did the same thing. They had the Crescent that ran from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans through your place.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it goes right by me.
Yeah, and they ran their own passenger train. And then, a few years into Amtrak, they too joined Amtrak, and that became an Amtrak service. The Rock Island stuck it out until they went bankrupt, and that was the end of it.
Jeez, so crazy, the history. And then we were talking about earlier, Kentucky barely has any. It's like some of those lines just skirt the borders.
Yeah, and it's so weird because of its position, smack dab in the middle of everything. You would think there'd be a dozen trains going through there, but it's just everything kind of goes around the outsides.
Yeah, I think that Savannah to Nashville could be a cool little jaunt. Going Savannah to Atlanta, and then right into Chattanooga and Nashville. That could be a cool rail fanning.
I think service like that would be more of an Atlanta, almost like a commuter service for Atlanta, a long distance commuter service, because everything is kind of, they got, train additions 5 directions out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
And,
it's certainly become a busy hub, and hopefully with connection service, you may have a short little layover. But that would be quite interesting. So this is what Rich and I were talking about earlier. You were done with the map, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is what you were saying was kind of not. It's a weird-looking type of locomotive.
My eyes.
Yes.
That is a weird-looking locomotive, isn't it?
Yeah, so the cool thing about the new train set, of course, is it can, cars can be added, cars can be dropped. And the other thing is the hood so there's a coupler on either end of this, but it's closed in because of the aerodynamics. Right. So the good thing about the current Acela, it's a hood and you have to take it off. Yeah. With this, the hood on the front opens up and allows you access to the coupler.
Kind of like a clamshell.
Yes, exactly. Or kind of like if you're looking at 611, how the coupler tucks in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, the thinking, you want to keep it aerodynamic plus, be able to have that access. God forbid it has to be towed.
Right.
But yeah, this is the new next generation of the Acela that'll run on the Northeast Corridor.
It's a face only a mother could love.
Yeah, I do like the color scheme. It looks pretty cool. The color
scheme is kind of neat, but it looks like a deformed platypus.
I haven't, unfortunately, I moved down here before they started doing the test. I would like to see it up close. Hopefully I'll be able to make a trip back to Massachusetts so I could be able to see it in action. But yeah, so they want to get it into revenue service at this sometime this year, and then all the train sets in service by 2022. So this will be interesting to see. And there it is. So, Rich, we're going to dive into your little segment here, and we're going to look at some classic Amtrak locomotives at this point. And this is a place that I've been to. And this photo is,
We've been there.
yeah, we've been there, and it looks a lot different compared
Yeah,
to
it
what it
sure
looks.
does. And if you like F40s, you're going to like the next few minutes. So this picture was taken on the platform at the Altoona station in downtown Altoona in the late '80s. That hotel on the right, that's where you and I were thinking about staying that one time when we went through there, but we ended up changing.
Yeah.
And to the rear of where I'm standing is the Transportation Museum.
Yep.
And you can see the pedestrian bridge up there. So that I took that the morning I took that picture. I took the train from Altoona to Johnstown, and then I waited about 2 hours in Johnstown. I'm sorry, it was the other way around. I drove out to Johnstown, rode the train from Johnstown to Altoona, waited a couple hours in Altoona, and then took the train back to Johnstown to get my car. That was the only way I could get to ride both directions through Horseshoe Curve. And that was our steed that morning after I got off the train in Altoona.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of rail fans will do that because you have the ability. God forbid, the service gets canceled in the other direction, then you're.
Then I'd be stuck. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, but it's better to be stuck probably in downtown Altoona versus in the other side. There's a little bit more things. There's, of course, restrooms, food within walking distance.
Yeah, and my hotel, I could take a taxi to the hotel, where I was staying. Because I was staying in at a hotel in Altoona, but I couldn't just take the train from Altoona to Johnstown. I had to spend the night in Johnstown to come back. So I just drove to Johnstown, rode the train. I actually I didn't wreck my car. I had an accident. I backed into a light pole in Johnstown.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, another $500 down the tube.
Oh, jeez. All right, let's take a look at the next one. LaGrange.
Yep, this is suburban Chicago. And this was on the Cal Zephyr. It wasn't this day's train, but a few days later, I did ride that train from downtown Chicago out to Denver and then to Salt Lake City. And this is in suburban commuter territory. So you have Metro trains, you have the BN. At this time, it was the BN. Now it's BNSF, and of course Amtrak. And I used to spend a lot of time hanging around LaGrange. A great place to rail fan. There was a really good hobby shop right down the street. A couple of nice little restaurants in that area. You could spend all day hanging out on the platform with no problems. And the EMD plant was only 5 minutes away. And then there were a couple of good railroad junctions to go rail fanning for other stuff. So it was a great place to go rail fanning. And this is the Cal Zephyr coming out of Chicago, going towards Denver.
Wow. The great thing about where we've spent a large majority of our life, there was no lack of commuter or passenger service, especially once you got into the hub of the city for you, and the same thing with me being near the Northeast Corridor. I kind of longed at one point to see freight.
Yeah.
So, let's take a look at this. Oh, these look cool.
Yeah, so this is in Aurora, a little bit further west, and downtown Aurora, the tracks are elevated through town, and the Amtrak and Metro service used to go to the old downtown Aurora station, which is not too far from where this picture was taken. Now they've relocated that stuff to a station a little bit further to the east, and then a little further to the east of there is Eola Road, which is a great place to watch trains. Right to my back is the Eola Yard, and it's a good sized yard for in suburban Chicago, and it's a great place to watch trains. They've actually closed off the road now, so the road is no longer there. It just stubs on both sides of the track. So you stand on the one at the end of the road by the barricade, and you can watch trains there all day long without a problem.
Well,
so
that's
a
good.
Great place to watch.
Well, that's good. It's still a spot to be able to watch, and
Yeah,
a lot of it along this route here, for me in North Carolina, a lot of roads are stubbed off, but they make, like you said, great spots to be able to to set up camp.
yeah, exactly. So the train in downtown, that is one of the Zephyrs, Cal Zephyr, and the one on the right at Eola Road is the one of the state supported services, and I don't remember. It's the one that goes to Quincy, and I don't remember the name of that train off the top of my head.
Wow. All right, let's take a look at this.
All right,
Ooh,
so
is that a diamond there, or what used
yeah,
to
it
be?
sure is. This is Joliet Union Station, and the station is right at the Diamond. And this train is on the it was the Santa Fe and the Illinois Central Gulf. It was originally Gulf Mobile Howe, before that the Alton, and now it's run by the CN and Santa Fe. They shared, there was 4 tracks there, two, and then they kind of shared it, and it was both there. And then the crossing track was in now it's actually owned by Metra, but that was the old Rock Island, and so the Rock Island service would be on the track right there in front of us, and the Amtrak train is on the Illinois Central slash Santa Fe line, and that's the old tower that was right across. These pictures are basically taken from the same spot. So the depot is on this side, and it opens up to both sides of the track, and then the tower is on the other side. Now it's all automated now, and I think the tower is probably gone by now. But that was a great place to go rail fanning. And what I did is I actually drove kind of around and came up on the other side, kitty corner from the depot, and there was a stairs there, and you could stand there as long as you stayed off the tracks and take pictures. Nowadays, you know, you get kicked out, but
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things you could
yeah,
do before that you couldn't do again. Now, looking at the larger photo there, is that a part of the diamond that got stubbed? It
no.
looks. What is that there?
Oh, that well, that might be. There are 2 tracks there,
I see that
and
there's
there
two.
used to be 3.
Okay, so that's what we're seeing is a third
Yeah, you can see
track.
that in the smaller picture. That's the track closest to the tower.
Yep, I'll
You can
blow
see
this
where
up
it
for
used to
our
go all the
audience.
way across.
Yeah, so right, if I hover my mouse right
Yeah,
here
right.
is where there used to be a track, and then of course the two active ones are here and here.
Right. Now, I think at the time they were working on restoring that. They've kind of rearranged that, and now I think most of the Metro service actually boards from to the right of where the tower is, so that the Metro trains don't have to cross and block the main Santa Fe um, CN tracks.
I get you. So the
So
station
yeah,
is so that when the train stops, it's not positioned blocking the line.
exactly. The Amtrak trains still go in and out of Union Station, but the commuter passengers now board from another facility to the right.
Very interesting. All right. Oh, this looks like a Y. Am I right?
Yeah, you
Or
are. In fact, you see my old railfan vehicle in the center bottom part
oh,
of the.
you mean the vehicle with all the antennas?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I see that. And it
That
looks
was
like you've got
my.
a pretty good perch here.
Yeah. So this is Bayview, Ontario. And back in the mid 80s, there was an article in Train magazines that declared this to be the best train watching spot in Canada. So I was like, okay, great, I'm going. So I had a copy of the magazine and I went there. And sure enough, oh, it was awesome. And back at this time, this was all wide open, and you could go in and spend as much time as you want in that area without having any problems. I was actually on there's a kind of a raised embankment. There was a highway that went across there, and I just climbed up to where I could get a safe place to take pictures, and I did. And at the time, Amtrak ran services into Toronto through Sarnia, Ontario, Port Huron, Michigan, and then back to Chicago. And then I didn't ride this year because I drove up there, but I did take the train up there the following year. There was a group of rail fans, and this is near a little town, a pretty big suburb called Burlington. And there was a group of rail fans that used to hang out at the Burlington Rail Depot at night to watch trains and socialize and stuff. And they called them the Burlington Area Rail Fans. And it was the BARF.
The BARF.
The BARF. And, I mean, you'd go there on a Tuesday night after dinner, and there'd be 15, 25, 30 people out there. And they all know each other. There'd be lawn chairs sitting on the old CN, then it was Go and then Via Rail depot. And they, as long as you behaved yourself, you were fine. We'd order pizza and, and drink soda pop and, socialize and had a great time.
Sounds like a good time.
Well,
yeah.
And you always shared pizza with the guy running the depot. The CN had an operator at the depot, so you always made sure you shared what you had with him.
Well, you got to take care of him because he's allowing you to hang out there.
And there's a couple great places to watch trains. And just basically further on behind those trees is the Royal Botanic Gardens. And there's a overlook there that you can kind of stand and look out over the bluff, and you get a great view of this whole junction. And just on the other side to the right is the bay of Lake Erie, and I think it's Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, which south of Toronto. And this is kind of, if you know where Toronto is, and then you go around the lake, you go to Burlington, Mississauga, Burlington, and then go back around to Hamilton. It's kind of halfway between Hamilton and Burlington.
Now, other than Amtrak at this point, were you able to see some freight as well?
Oh yeah. They had CN and the CP both went through there, and at that time, the Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo was still operating. They were owned by the CP at the time, but they were still separately operated, and they still had a couple Jeeps in the old TH&B paint, and that was in back of where I was standing taking these pictures. And of course, there was the Amtrak, there was Via, and then Go Transit.
Now, is this still
suburban trains?
Do you know if this location is still a hub for rail
it's
fans?
Still a hub. You just can't get in there anymore because it's all fenced off. But there are other places where you can rail fan there without having any problems. You just can't go where I was at that time.
Yeah, lucky.
Oh yeah. Well, it was a different time back in the day.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I love the angles, to be able to get it down lower and then to be able to get that bird's eye view is really awesome. And speaking of another bird's eye view, here is the Empire Builder. Tell us a little bit about this. This looks very picturesque.
Yeah. This is in Washington State. Again, in the late 80s. This is my buddy Jim and I followed rail fanned our way from Minneapolis all the way through the Dakotas and through Montana and then up into Oregon and Washington. And this is along the Columbia River. The Empire Builder is coming out of Seattle back towards Chicago. And we heard it on the scanner, and we found a great spot where we're basically standing around the side of the road, and just there was a picture of opportunity, and it turned out really, really nice. I just wish I had a better camera. I took this picture with an Argus C3.
Is this like at dusk? It looks like it's starting to get a little bit. I mean, still,
it's starting to get a little long in the shadows. It was taken in probably in June, and so this was probably getting close to like 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Wow, I mean, it's such a beautiful spot. You've got the water, you've got the mountains, you've got the train. I mean, it's just a beautiful location.
Oh yeah, like I said, I just wish I had a better camera. I can imagine what that picture would look like with an iPhone these days.
Yeah, I mean, digital photography is awesome, and especially with being able to I know with me, I would definitely set it so I'd rapid fire and take as many photos and
Yeah.
be able to get it perfectly positioned, because it can process so quickly. But yeah, it's so beautiful. That looks really cool. Looks like this is a little bit closer to where you live now, right, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. Remember before we were talking about the possibility of Amtrak rerouting the trains actually through Phoenix. Well, at the time I took this picture, they actually did go through Phoenix. So at this little town called Picacho, there's a truck stop, a Dairy Queen, and a couple mobile homes, and that's pretty much it. And of course, then the railroad junction. And at that time, the Amtrak trains came off the Sunset Route and up the Phoenix line, and then through Phoenix, and then back to the line further west. Um, and this train was coming off the Phoenix line, coming into the junction, and then Picacho Peak, and then Tucson is to the rear. Uh, Back that way is the photographer standing. So at this time, they still had the old baggage cars,
Mm-hmm.
and there were still some at that time they were still running some of the old Santa Fe high level cars, and then of course the Amtrak Superliner. I think the very first high level car there is one of the old Santa Fe cars, and then it goes into the Superliners, and that was a great place to go rail fanning because you had the Southern Pacific, and you could get trains going either direction there, and it was really busy. And it was back in the heyday, but when the SP was still rocking railroad.
I got a question for you. I've wondering, since you've gotten all these photos digitized,
Mm-hmm.
at some point, if you're able to travel out to some of these locations that you've rail fanned, would you like to try to recreate the photo? Get it if
Yeah,
possible, stand in the same spot, and so you could see the side by side what it looks
yeah,
like then and what it looks like now.
yeah. What it would look like, 30 years, later would be. I have thought about doing that exact thing, and that's something that I've been thinking about. Once I get finished processing, I mean, I had close to 10,000 pictures, and I about 2/3 of the way through them all now. So,
I mean, even this spot. I mean, depending on the rail may not look that great, but at least you can show what it looks like then and what it looks like now.
yeah.
Which would be really cool. I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
thinking that just looking at some of your photos,
Hmm.
and just to recreate what they look like.
Yeah. So
Another
this is still the
beautiful
same
shot here.
area. And you'll notice that that's a P30CH.
Yep.
That's a
Wow.
pooch, as they call them. It was General Electric's competition to the P40, F40PH, and they were actually pretty common on the Sunset. And both times I rode the Sunset, we had P30s on the lead, and same thing, pretty much the same type of train set. Typically, a couple of locomotives at the front, a single level baggage car, a former Highliner. They used them as dormitory cars for the crew, and then the rest were superliners. But on this train, there were a couple of private cars at the end, including one in UP paint and one of them with big red stripe on it. And they, at that time, it was very common for Amtrak trains to have private cars at the end.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you that. It looks like I could see
Mhm.
that there definitely was a private car in the end. All right. Is this the same location?
Same location. And what happened is one of the Amtrak locomotives broke down. I heard them chatting about it on the scanner, and they one of the Amtrak locomotives broke down, so they grabbed a unit off of a passing freight train, um, and tied it on. And they still do the same thing these days. It's not that uncommon to see a BNSF or a UP or Norfolk Southern engine on the front of an Amtrak train. But there's almost always Amtrak power to generate the head end power electricity to power the electrics for the train, but the freight locomotive will help provide more pulling power.
Very interesting. And we've talked about this location quite a bit in past shows, even on the Scanner Guys show, which is sponsored by Scanner Master. We've talked about Tower 55. Tell us what we're looking at here, Rich.
Okay, so this is one of the Amtrak trains, and the name of the train itself escapes me. But again, typical Amtrak train for the late 80s. A couple F-40s, a couple baggage car. In this case, there's a single-level passenger car, and then a dormitory car, and then the Superliner equipment coming through Tower 55. The next day or later that day, I forget which, there was a derailment that I'm standing there, and there was they were switching back and forth a whole line of empty auto racks. And it was coming out of the Centennial Yard, which was the Missouri Pacific Yard at the time, and they were backing it around and kind of like a big S-curve coming through the tower. And there's a whole maze of tracks there. And they're coming out of the yard and backing it down and around, and I think they were going into the Katy Yard on the other side of this. And as they were backing it up and going forward, there was slack running in. And the slack ran in as the train was backing up, and two cars jumped up like this and then came back down off the rail. And the train's still pushing, and there's no airlines connected because it's just a yard job being switched. And so these cars are going every different direction. And there I am standing there, and I'm on the wrong side of the tracks from my car. So I know I'm going to be stuck, but now I got this train derailing in front of me. So there was the SP, the Southern Pacific, had a yard office behind me. So I go running over there, go pounding on the door, and finally a guy came out, "What the heck are you doing?" Or more four-letter words on that. I said, "That train is derailing." And he said, "Whose train is that?" And I said, "I think it's the Mopac." And so now he's grabbing a radio, trying to find the Mopac channel, and two other guys go running over to try to start doing some handbrakes to get them to stop. And eventually they got it stopped. And it took a while for them to get it cleaned up. And eventually the guy was able to get me. They were able to pull some cars far enough apart. And one of the guys escorted me back over to the other side of the tracks where I could get into my car. And it was it was a lot of fun. You don't see a train derail in front of your face very often.
No, you don't. And it's probably quite an interesting thing to be able to, to be witnessing it firsthand. I just can't imagine.
Oh, yeah. And it scared the bejesus out of me. I mean, in the whole scheme of things, it was a relatively minor derailment. A couple of empty tri-level auto racks, got scattered around. But, it took them a few hours to get it cleaned up. But, I mean, I'm not a railroad employee or, never have been. And, it's scary to see these things wrecking in front of you.
That's for sure. What an interesting photo and an interesting story, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they get a webcam there now. It looks a lot different than it did.
Yes, it does look a lot different. Look at this. I mean, this looks like a cool spot for the landscapes alone.
Yeah, this is near a little place called Helper, Utah. Okay. And Helper is a place where they would put helpers on a train to help push it across the mountains. Mm-hmm. And it's out in the middle of pretty much nowhere in Utah. And again, this was just a picture of opportunity. I heard them on the scanner, and I just looked for a good place to stop to take pictures. And I found this spot alongside the road where I could, get a good shot of the tracks, and got lucky.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you did. Mm-hmm. And so you were just pulled off the road right here, and this is what you were able to witness.
Yeah. Like I said, I was just out rail fan. I was chasing the Rio Grande. Through western Colorado and into Utah, and eventually I got it. And there's a couple of freight units down there on the lower picture below the Amtrak train. And like I said, I just happened to be in the right spot. I heard them chattering on the scanner. That's why when you go rail fanning, always bring a scanner.
Yeah, we can't say that enough. I mean, a scanner is such a valuable tool
Yeah.
to be able to hear what's going on, and especially, I'm sure that derailment at Tower 55. I'm sure the radio was bustling with
Oh
activity
yeah.
then.
Yeah, absolutely. So this train is in Kansas City, and if you know Kansas City, you'll recognize this spot, and specifically on the upper right corner of the upper picture, the Western Hotel sign, the Western. I'm sorry, Western Auto Parts. I think that is. It's a very iconic sign, and it still exists to this day in Kansas City, and this. And I think they call this the Bottomlands. I'm not all that familiar with Kansas City. I've only been there a few times. Oh, there's my railfan truck.
Oh yeah,
I
I
just
see
noticed that
it.
it was in the picture. I didn't even notice that before.
Yeah, so it's right here.
Yeah, yeah. That was my my. I was an '88 Ford Bronco 2 that I bought, and specifically for railfanning because I had 4-wheel drive. And I the very first day, the very first trip I took on that was like 3 days after I bought it, and I promptly got stuck in the mud in Munising, Michigan. So that was a fun trip. But anyways, this is just outside of downtown Kansas City, and again, pretty typical Amtrak at the time. A couple F40s, some baggage cars, a what they call an MHC, with material handling car. Kind of a high-speed box car, and several more baggage cars before the Streamline, the Highline dormitory car, and then the Superliner stuff. So remember, I told you before, riding the train through Horseshoe Curve.
Yep.
I drove out to Johnstown, PA, and this is the train that I was riding, pulling into the station. And I had backed my car, in fact, the railfan truck. I backed that into the light pole down at the ground level. This train station was kind of in the higher level, and that's the stairs going down. And I was at the parking lot when I backed into the light pole.
Jeez.
About 20 minutes before this picture was taken.
Oh my word.
Yeah. And then on the right side is McCook, Illinois, which is, if you know where LaGrange is, where the that other picture I took in LaGrange, McCook is about 6 or 7 miles south of there, and it's where the Santa Fe crosses the Indiana Harbor Belt. And just to the right of where I was standing in that picture, you see that kind of a hill there. That is the tailings from a quarry. And on the other side of that quarry is the EMD plant, where thousands and thousands of SD40s, and chances are the F40s that you see in the picture were built there. And so this is the Santa Fe train crossing the Indiana Harbor Belt, and this used to be a great railfan spot, and you can see more railfans standing there.
Yeah.
And you go there on a Sunday afternoon Sunday morning in the summertime, there'll be 15, 20 people there. And it was a great spot, but eventually, like all good things, it got fenced off and you can't get back there anymore. But it was a great spot to go and watch trains for a day. Busy, busy, busy. There's always something happening there.
That's neat. All right, so if you want to stay connected with Train Aficionado, definitely do that through our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Make sure you hit the subscribe button tonight if you're watching us live, or if you're watching us on the replay. Just hit the subscribe button, be notified each time there's a show. If you're just finding us for the first time, the first Monday of every month, Rich and I will pick a topic of discussion and talk about it during the show. We're going to spend a few more minutes with you talking about additional things, maybe any questions that you may have. So definitely check that out. And also, if you're a scanner enthusiast, you want to check us out on our other show, The Scanner Guys, which are brought to you by Scanner Master. We're actually going to look at the inside guts of the SDS 100 and 200. Don't do that at home, boys and girls. You'll avoid your warranty. I will just say that both of my radios survived. Well, that is a good thing because they're very expensive paperweights. Train Aficionado Live. Our next broadcast will be Monday, May the 3rd. And we have our first interview on this channel, which will be Danny Harmon of Distant Signals. He's a YouTuber and a huge rail fan. He's going to be joining us next week talking about not next week, I wish it was next week, next month, talking about his channel and how he got into rail fanning and so on. So that's going to be a really good show as well. So make sure you set a reminder, May the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on the channel. We hope that you join us then. And as always, each first Monday of the month, as we do this show, how this show was born was, Rich and I we could spend the Scanner Guy show talking about trains. So we needed some sort of platform to be able so we could talk trains all the time. So, and this is it here. Lots of people watching tonight. We have probably a few questions here and there, Rich.
Yeah. So howdy, pardon me. Howdy to everybody who's checked in. A bunch of our regulars, Chris and Les. Did you get that email from Les earlier today?
Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to take a full look at it, but I did receive the notification. It seems like a lot of changes in your neck of the woods, Les, with buildings being torn down, and then things going on with the tracks up there and so on. So very interesting with that.
All right. John, our buddy from Jersey, is checking in. We have another guy I know, the exact same name as you, John, and so every time I see that, I get confused about which John Ian is that. So. Carmen, he's one of our regulars for the Scanner show. Yeah, 50 years of operating at a loss. Yeah, Amtrak has never made money. It was intended to make money, but of course, it never happened. I don't think there's any way that they can legitimately make money on Amtrak with the long distance services. With the corridor services, the Northeast Corridor, that could probably pay for itself with the proper investment. But there's no way they're going to make money with the non-corridor services, the Western services and stuff. There's just not enough demand and not enough patronage, and there's no way they're going to be able to make money on that from the fare box.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about it is a lot of this generation, if Amtrak can invest the money into a proper rail infrastructure, there's a lot of the millennials and some of the generation that came after the millennials have kind of embraced passenger service, versus, getting a driver's license. They found, a lot of studies that I've went to a lot of meetings for possible rail lines and so on. You're finding that where there is a commuter rail line and there's a train station, they're starting to build around that with housing and so on. Because a lot of people in the millennials and the younger find it's very expensive to have a vehicle. And, if you have means of transportation, to be able to hop on a train in Foxborough or wherever and then take the train into Boston, for example. It's
the train has to go where you want to go from where you are. So if that's, if the train is there, and use it, and then once that's going, then you have to have the service at the proper times and proper locations and the proper equipment. So it can be done, but I don't know if it'll ever be to the point where it'll be profitable. A couple more check-ins. Our buddy Lincoln from San Diego, Wilbur's online with us tonight. Our buddy Dale from Montana asked us about the automakers. It was a great question that we answered a lot earlier. Apparently, they're making the Acelas not far from where Carmen lives in Is that in Massachusetts? Is that where they're doing that?
No, I think Carmen's in New York, and
Oh,
I
okay.
think they're building it in the New York area. I know they have a testing facility. Where is that for the Challengers? Is that I want to say it's somewhere up in your part of the country where they have a
Um,
test track for the.
well, the big AAR test track is outside of Denver near Colorado Springs. Um,
Yeah, because
and
they've
I've been through there a couple of times, but of course they don't let you on the property without
proper credentials, and which you
proper
don't.
credentials. And there's railfan credentials don't cut it.
No,
So, but I have listened to their NXDN system on the scanner.
nice.
Um, if they ever Amtrak ever runs through southern Montana, they can make a new spur to go to West Yellowstone. So there were a few spurs into national parks, Yellowstone, and there was more famous one, the Grand Canyon, that the Santa Fe would run to the Grand Canyon, and that's now run by the Grand Canyon Railroad. And I rode that a couple of times. Last time was about 3 years ago. Kevin's checking in from Georgia. The funicular in Johnstown. So yes, I have ridden the funicular in Johnstown. It's kind of a thing that rides you up the side of the hill. And they also have a funicular at Altoona at the train station. Or
I mean,
the
at the
Horseshoe
horseshoe
Curve.
curve. Yeah.
And we've ridden that.
Yep.
And the first time I went to Horseshoe Curve, they didn't have that. And this was back in the days when I had the video camera that was huge. And then the batteries weighed about 20 pounds. I had a camera bag about the size of a suitcase.
Like a gym bag, like a
Yeah,
big
like a
gym
big
bag.
gym bag. And I had a tripod, I had a cooler, and I had a lawn chair. And I'm lugging that all up those stairs that go all the way up to Horseshoe Curve. And there's like 400 stairs to get you from the parking facility up to the curve. And that's like 5 stories. It's huge. And of course, when you get there, then you realize you forgot something in the car that you got.
Or you got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, they had no bathrooms up there.
Yeah, you have to go back down to the.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So I took a chance and left all my gear there, and thankfully it was still there when I got back. So, yes, Taylor, you can you can watch the replays afterwards. You'll post that up later.
Yeah, it automatically does it. I don't even have to do anything. The magic of YouTube, it just it makes it available shortly after the broadcast, and then it's there forever.
Cool. Les asked about Amtrak. Do they still have trains going to Toronto? I think what they do now is I think it's a connecting service with VIA. At the time, both VIA and Amtrak ran between Chicago and Toronto. And half the service was run by Amtrak, half was by VIA. They'd swap crews at the border, and I'm not quite sure how they do that now, but I think VIA and Amtrak, they connect to each other, and then they just you get across and go into the other guy's train. I'm not sure how that works now, but I'm sure they have some sort of service between Chicago and Toronto. Let's see here. Wayne's checking in. The new Acela set made a test run on the Keystone line in August, but it broke down past Lancaster.
Oh my word!
It had to be towed back to Philly. So check YouTube for videos on that. Todd is one of our first time watchers. He's watched our scanner show over the weekend. Got some new toys, so if you need new scanners and new gears, please give us a call at Scanner Master. We'll be glad to take care of you.
That's for sure.
Jim is happy to see Danny is going to be with us next month. So
yeah, we're looking forward to it too. I mean, he just does a well polished broadcast. I mean, he's got background on the lines. He uses his camera on the ground, drone. I mean,
very professionally done.
Yeah, and it's very educational. I mean, I feel like, his videos are great for rail fans and also for someone that's looking for something to watch on YouTube. It's very educational. You don't really, I mean, it's all aspects of, whether a beginner in the hobby or someone that's been in the hobby for years.
And he's a professional pronunciator too. So, he you can listen to him all day long without getting without going crazy.
Yeah.
So, and that's a bunch. So, yeah, hey, I want to thank everybody who's checked in. Sometimes we get too busy where we can't acknowledge every comment, but we certainly do read every one of them for sure.
Yeah, so this has been an interesting show. We've been talking about Amtrak, the first 50 years. I mean, we literally, just scraped the surface with some of Amtrak's history. It's very interesting to see, where they go. And I do agree with you, Rich. I mean, these shorter routes, if they're able to make them work, that could be the way for them to make a profit. I feel like the Empire Builder and lines like that are definitely more of a vacation type of operation. Where
Yeah.
you're going on that line to basically get away from it all and be able to spend some time on a train and see the beautiful landscapes of this country that we're in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no comparison to being able to view it from the window of an Amtrak train. And I mean that's why the Superliner equipment for the trains out west have these big, huge windows that wrap around the roof so you could see everything. And I spent the almost the entire trip in one of those Viewliner cars, high level Viewliner cars. On that going from Chicago to Denver and then to Salt Lake City. You can't get a better view than that.
Yeah, and then if you've got a sleeper car, which I haven't done yet, I so want to be able to sleep on a
Yeah.
train. You're able to bring your scanner. You could set up a couple of things. A lot of people, what they do is they bring a scanner and they bring a mobile GPS. And what they do is they're able to follow the train, and the GPSs know exactly where they are. And
Yep.
then they also have the scanner, and then sometimes they'll pre-program the radio, so they'll make the frequency changes as the crew
Yeah.
makes frequency changes along the route, and being able to hear everything that's going on your train, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. I mean, I'll never ride a train without a scanner. Always bring earphones though.
Yep, bring earphones, but if you're in your private sleeping car, you can kind of listen openly and enjoy the view.
Yep. Yeah, I had a sleeper from New Orleans to Chicago because it was an overnight train. You left New Orleans at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and at that time of the year it was like September, so it got dark around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and after that there really wasn't a whole lot to see until you got to into Illinois, and then you know Illinois is not quite the scenic wonder that Arizona is. So, but yeah, it was a great experience.
And certainly, I can't wait. I just hope to be able to do that someday.
Yeah.
I guess that's going to wrap it up for us this evening. I just want to remind you next month, Danny Harmon, Distant Signals, will be joining us for an interview. That'll be the next broadcast, Monday, May the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate that as well. We hope that you're able to join us each and every first Monday of the month as we broadcast live here on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. We are always looking for suggestions for upcoming topics, or even if you know someone that would be a great guest, you can email us through the website, trainaficionado.com. I can get email through there, and make sure you check out my blog. I mean, I've been working on the blog since 2013, so it's been quite a while. And then we just launched the show midway through last year a little bit, and then this will be our first full season of Train Aficionado live this year. So I want to thank you guys very much for joining us, and of course the channel will get bigger and bigger with your help, and we appreciate it. So definitely share the show with friends and family. Let them know that we're out there as well. Rich, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, just make sure you practice safe rail fanning out there, and wear your mask in public, and stay off the railroad property unless you have specific permission. And as long as you're on public property, enjoy your rail fanning.
Yep, and make sure you bring a scanner with you, so you'll be able to get an inside look on what's going on those rail lines that are right by you. So I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And we'll catch you again next month on Train Aficionado Live. And then, of course, for those scanner enthusiasts that watch, you can catch us every Wednesday night on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel. So have a great night. We'll catch you again on Wednesday or next month on Monday.
Later.
Bye-bye.